Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Bellbrook Middle School for our joint meeting. I will first turn the meeting over to Mayor Schweller to have some opening comments.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter. Good evening, and thank you to everyone who came to this joint community leaders meeting. It is good to see all the elected officials again here tonight for another joint meeting to continue our practice of working and communicating together. The particular time of this meeting follows a recent policy decision by the Board of Education regarding school security. However, this meeting is not a follow-up on that policy. Recent news articles mischaracterize this meeting and its purpose. It is important for the audience and viewers to understand this joint meeting has been planned for months. It is for the entities to discuss how to continue working together for improvement of the community as a whole. The topic of student and school safety is a top priority to each entity who serves this community. And we will continue to discuss the joint efforts we can make to accomplish it. School safety is a broad topic, and joint efforts such as school resource officers, improvements to walkability for students, community events, and education are all part of the conversation we intend to have. Each entity here this evening is meeting as their own governing body for a joint discussion. We'll begin by having each entity formally come to order and begin the meeting with the compliance of their own policy. Thank you, Mr. Carpenter.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, the city is first to roll call.
Thank you again. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Bellbrook City Council work session. Today's date is Monday, September the 12th, 2022. The time is approximately 5:30 p.m. We're meeting at the Bellbrook Middle School, 3600 Feetwire Road, Bellbrook, Ohio. Rob, if you could call the roll.
Mrs. Cyphers?
Present.
Mr. Greenwood? Here. Mr. Harding?
Here.
Mr. Havens?
Here.
Mr. Hope?
Present.
Mrs. Middlestetter?
Here.
And Mayor Schweller.
Here, thank you.
I'm calling to order the Bellbrook-Sugarcreek Board of Education meeting. This is a meeting of the Bellbrook Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business, but not to be considered a public community meeting. There is a time for public participation during the meeting, as indicated on the agenda. Calling the roll, Mrs. Dorn,
Here.
Mr. Kinsey,
Present.
Mr. Price is absent, Mrs. Anderson,
Here.
Mr. Carpenter is present. On to the Sugar Creek Township trustees.
So this is the, is this on?
Yep.
Is it working?
Yep.
This is a work session of the Sugar Creek Township trustees. We'll call the roll. Mrs. Stephanie?
Here.
Mr. Mueller? Here. And Mr. Kramer is on his way.
My name's Stephen K. Haller. I'm a park commissioner of the Bellbrook-Sugarcreek Park District. I'm here with our executive director, Jeff Stewart. This is not one of our public regularly scheduled meetings. We are here, the park district is here simply for an informational session.
Yes, I'm passing it back around.
All right. You back it up right back here. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Standing business.
Mr. Carpenter, Bellbrook City Council does not have any standing business to come before us this evening.
All right, thank you.
All right, for the Bellbrook-Sugarcreek Board of Education, new business, out-of-school travel, out-of-state travel. Recommend approval of out-of-state travel for the following: high school marching band to Louisville, Kentucky on October 1st, 2022 for participation in Bands of America regional competition. The event was originally scheduled to take place in Dayton.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Kinsey,
Second.
Mrs. Anderson is a second. Any questions or comments?
If you haven't seen the show, it is absolutely amazing. So everybody get out and see it this weekend after the football game. Is that right? After the football game? Yeah.
All right, to call the roll, Mrs. Anderson.
Yes.
Mr. Price is absent. Mr. Kinsey,
Yes.
Mrs. Dorn,
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter is a yes. The motion passes. Trustees?
As far as the Sugar Creek Township update, I'd like to let everyone know, you've probably seen quite a bit of news that our Sugar Creek Township World War II vet Jim Pee Wee Martin passed away, maybe very appropriately on Patriots Day, September 11th. And I'm sorry, yeah, 9/11, yes, that's September 11th of this year. And the funeral will be, well, they're actually calling it a celebration of life. And it'll, they're doing a event tomorrow at Sugar Creek, at the Sugar Valley Golf Club. And there will be a open time to visit from
4 to 7.
4 to 7, and then at 7:15 is the actual celebration of life. And then the following day, they will transport Mr. Martin from Sugar Creek Township to the VA cemetery to be buried. But that kind of ties into a update as far as our Veterans Memorial for Sugar Creek Township. All of the entities have had a very vital role in helping us out with that. And I've talked to each of you individually as far as I'm giving presentations. But as an update for the community, we have received Ohio Capital Improvement Fund money. We've also received money from the Greene County Commissioners, and we've received anonymous grants. And there is a public brick sale available to anyone in the community. So there are red bricks for any veteran, any of the branches of the military, and that's to commemorate anyone, family, friends, living or passed away that you would like to commemorate. But it's also available to anyone in the community. So businesses, individuals, entities are all invited, and they will have great bricks. So everyone is invited to purchase a brick, and that information is available on the Sugar Creek Township website. And there is also a tribute, why I mentioned Jim Martin first. There is going to be a larger-than-life bronze statue that is a separate fundraising entity, but they're raising money as well for a 10-foot bronze statue of Mr. Martin. And he, true to his style, he didn't want the memorial to be all just about him. He actually, as we were talking to the developer of the bronze statue, he asked that we also commemorate all of the World War II veterans that passed away jumping into Normandy. So that memorial will have approximately 3,200 names of those that fell jumping into Normandy during World War II. So I think it'll be a wonderful asset for our community, and part of the location of it, the reason for the location on Pine Court is that we can have, like the junior ROTC can go over and have commemorative patriotic events for the community. So we're very excited about this.
I will mention, we've got a fire levy on this ballot this fall. It is a renewal, and there is no increase in taxes associated.
Really?
725 Park.
I'm Jeff Stroh with the Bellbrook-Sugarcreek Park District. We were approached by the city of Bellbrook.
Jeff.
Is it not? Okay. It's been a while. It's been a while. They had asked that we consider allowing alcohol for special events in Bellbrook Park. We do have that passed. That special permit process has been approved by the board. So I'd say going forward in a few weeks that would be active, that for civic organizations, government organizations, Sugar Creek for sure, Bellbrook, would be able to apply for that special permit process exclusively for Bellbrook Park.
725 Park?
725 Park. Mr. Crane would like me to talk a little bit about that. We are collaborating with Greene County Park District on some parkland that we own on 725, approximately 27 acres. The county has 25 acres abutting that. We had applied for some capital funds. We got some of the funds that we had asked for, so we're going to be meeting with Greene County to see how we're going to move forward on this. I don't think we're going to be able to get all the amenities that we had talked about doing, but I think we can get those two parcels stitched together where we can open that up for public access.
Where is that located? Where on 725?
It's near the entrance. As soon as you're heading east on 725, as soon as you go over the Little Miami, it's that parcel of land. Irv Beezer used to have that property. There's a small cabin on it now.
Used to be from Pennowood Road to River's Edge.
Oh,
On
okay.
River Ridge too. So that whole area is about 50-some acres.
Mhm.
And that's going to be open when?
We're going to open that up as soon as possible. I got some things I want you to comment on that.
Oh, I better pass it back to Doug. So back about the, if you're not aware, it's open to the public, this celebration of life. At 6:15 tomorrow, there'll be 2 paratroopers jumping out of airplanes landing on number 18 at Sugar Valley. So it's open to the public. I think it'd be a really neat process, and it's something I think the public would be pretty excited about. There's 100 soldiers coming from Fort Campbell, so we'll have at least 100 people there. I'm expecting somewhere between 250 and 500.
Wow. All right, moving on then to the next item is joint discussion, our entity's new business item. And first will be Dr. Cozad addressing school and student safety.
Yeah, so I just want to just kind of review. I know some of the board members have already heard this, and maybe some other folks have heard it too. We presented this at previous board meetings, so most of this is not new information, but I think it's important just to kind of give some background information about school safety and planning and training and so forth. So again, really this whole document and all of this speaks to the layered approach that we take to safety in the school district. So just to quickly go through this, again, this is like a 3-page document. I'm not going to go through every single thing here. This is also on our website, in the communications or in the safety section in our website. So this is all there also. So building safety plans every 3 years. Building plans are updated. Police and fire work with us on those. Safety meetings, the school safety committee meets with the administrative team. Again, police and fire departments are on those committees as we meet and discuss school safety issues. Countywide response to active shooter, active threats. So again, Greene County created this plan with input from all the police departments, the school districts. ALICE training, all of our staff members are trained in ALICE training. This also, we have periodic training with our students and staff. Armed response team, the board passed a resolution on the 8th to create this implementation committee and this highly vetted, highly trained response team. Crisis Prevention Institute, CPI as it's called, Nonviolent Crisis Intervention training designed really for de-escalation. Threat assessment teams, each of our buildings are trained, have threat assessment teams that analyzing threatening behaviors and situations in school and then take appropriate actions for that. And Stop the Bleed training prepares participants in recognition of life-threatening bleeding and intervening. Premier Health, we work with Premier Health on this. Student supports, and again, I apologize quickly just going through these, but again, just to kind of, I don't want to spend too much time on it, but just to give some good background information. Counselors, a mental health counselor. Each building and district has at least one full-time counselor. The district has a mental health counselor. Hope Squad, suicide prevention. Again, right now this is at the middle school, but also hopefully moving to some other buildings. Handle with care. So when there's a challenging situation that happens at a home after school hours, the police communicate with us, let us know essentially that something has happened in that home. Again, high level overview, but just letting us know to be cognizant of that for that child. Moving into technology monitoring, reporting, and communication, we have a tip line, the Ohio School Safety Center. This is on our website. And again, act quickly on this. They act quickly on this to let us know, or the authorities know quickly if there's something inappropriate or unsafe going on. Securely, we have software that monitors our students' internet searches and keystrokes. We get alerts from them at all hours of the day and night. And there's also a parent app to monitor, that you can monitor as parents can monitor your child's activity on a school device. Visitor management system, we're in the process of implementing that. That's new at the beginning of this school year to screen visitors during school hours. Radios, administrators all have radios with a secure channel for communication during an emergency. Facilities, camera systems, we're right in the process of upgrading those camera systems throughout our entire school district. State-of-the-art camera systems. Interior school doors can quickly be shut, locked, and secured. Outside school doors, obviously doors are locked during the school day, and our current access systems are currently being updated. That's pretty close to being done. 3M impact resistance film installed on windows to slow down entry into our buildings. And then also the night lock security door stopper, another added piece, safety barricades installed on our classroom doors. Background checks, school employees have those background checks, as do volunteers. So you see there's many layers to our school security system, or school security systems. And then lastly, school security and resource officers. So at this time, we have one part-time township officer that's in that role. And then in the past, we've also had contracts with the Bellfort Police Department to have some on-site presence during the day at our BCI in Stephen Bell. And then also to note, a state school safety grant. The district has awarded $200,000 from House Bill 687, and that money is being used on our camera systems, our door locking systems, and our visitor management system is a piece of that, those upgrades. That doesn't pay for all of it. That money does go to that. So again, that gives everybody kind of a good update of all the layers of our security or safety at the school district. And then that kind of leads right into our conversation this evening, focusing on school resource officers. And I know that just to kind of give a note of time, I know the township does have a regular meeting at 7 o'clock. So I know you do need to leave for that at some point here. So again, this is just a suggestion for this piece of the agenda, that we focus maybe on 30 to 45 minutes or so for this piece of the agenda, and then we can move into the other pieces of the agenda as public converse or public open communication after that. Again, if the conversation is longer than, the conversation is longer than, just a suggestion, just to kind of be cognizant of that. I know the township obviously wants to be involved in the conversation. So at that, I will turn it over to whoever wants to talk about school resource officers.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Well, at our last meeting, we had a really thorough presentation on options for safety that focused a lot on the value of the school resource officer, that that's an integral part of the safety plan and an active shooter response, that the school resource officer is better than a security officer from, a hired firm or some other kind of service, but someone who was in the community, had a vested interest in the community, and was able to establish a relationship with students on a regular basis. So I'll kind of kick it off and pass it on to Mr. Kinsey. Do you want to chat on that?
Thank you very much. I certainly can only speak for myself and do not want to speak for anybody else, but I believe I heard at our last meeting, I think everybody chime in to say that we support very much a hybrid approach of school resource officers as well as other capable, trained, highly vetted responders. So we can see where the conversation goes here, but I know that not having a single point of failure, God forbid, the worst day ever comes and visits our schools. I'd like to leave no stone unturned and no option unexplored. And obviously realizing that we all have budget constraints. We all have other constraints, many of which I may not even be aware of. So I look forward to seeing where the conversation goes. Because speaking just for me, I very much support a hybrid approach.
We received quite a bit of communication this week, a lot of which, if I could, there were some one-offs, but if I could classify in two separate buckets. A number of emails we received wanted to know more details about the plan that was discussed last week. So I just wanted to make very clear that the plan was not approved. The authorization to form the implementation committee was approved, and that committee will create the plan. That committee will be comprised of subject matter experts to be determined with input from staff members. That plan will have to come back before the school board to be approved. So that was the first bucket. The second bucket, though, and I think this was I can see how an individual either watching or an individual who is present would get the impression that we talked about school resource officers and then we decided not to do them. I apologize if that's what people thought. We talked about school resource officers. We could not make a move on school resource officers because it's not one we can do as a school board on our own. We could say that we want to put a bunch of money towards that, but we cannot force these entities to create police officers for us. So it's only something that we can discuss here jointly. Number one, to be frank, we would love help in resourcing that from a financial perspective, but also, even if we did it all on our own, we cannot manifest officers and force you to put them in our schools. So that's, I guess, we come hat in hand to all of you. I think my intent, what I would love to see is an officer in every building. I have recognized that may not be possible immediately. I think that's a great goal. Maybe it is possible immediately is certainly not possible. You don't have police officers that you can gen up and put in our school buildings tomorrow. Near term, hopeful. Longer term would be a goal that I would like us jointly to work towards. And if it's not possible in the near term, maybe some collaborative or creative solutions just to have, in the meantime, an increased presence in our buildings would be appreciated.
So from the township standpoint, and I think everybody at this table is on the same page, the safety of the kids is paramount, it's number one. We recognize, I think, collectively, that a school resource officer in each school is the best case scenario. It is the best deterrent that we could possibly have. We also recognize that there is an associated cost with that, that collectively we cannot afford at this date. I think we've talked that out and come to that conclusion. I guess the first thing I would ask is that we consider this from a priority standpoint. What are the schools, the locations that are the most susceptible based on experience, the highest risk locations? We have a school resource officer that is at the high school part-time. He moves over to the middle school part-time each day for a short period of time so that he meets those kids also. We would love to have him there full-time. We can't afford to do that, to pull him off the road, because we'd have to hire somebody else into the road position. My understanding is, and Rob and members of City Council, that you guys are thinking about funding a school resource officer for the other two schools. I don't know if that's true or not. That's what I've heard. I'm not asking for a commitment here right now. But if you're giving that consideration, I would ask that we collectively sit down and figure out what the cost is to put a school resource officer at the high school full-time and at the middle school full-time, because I think those are our biggest risk locations. That's my personal opinion. I think I'm basing that on history. There have been shootings at elementary schools, there's no question, but primarily these are older kids that pull these things at the high schools and middle schools. If we do that, if we pool our resources, we may be able to make that happen collectively. I will tell you, and I'm gonna get on my soapbox here for a second. 4 years ago, I had a resident come to me who had a daughter here in 8th grade at the middle school. And he said, I understand we've got a school resource officer at the high school that comes to the middle school once a day, but he's not there all the time. I said, right. There had just been another school shooting. He said, what would it cost to put a school resource officer at the middle school all the time? And I told him it was, approximately $100,000. And he said he would write the check the next day to cover that, which was great. But that's for 1 year, because his daughter was moving up the next year to the high school. And he wasn't going to continue to do that. And it was very gracious of him, but it was a short-term solution for a long-term problem. But it got me thinking, and I went to our legislators and I asked them to introduce legislation that would allow us at a local level to pass a levy solely for the purposes of funding, training, maintaining school resource officers. 5-year levy. In our community, it comes out to about $20 per household. Now, is anybody opposed to $20 per household to make the kids safer? So I got it finally introduced this year in legislation. The way that legislation works at state level is it goes to the House sends it to committee, the committee makes changes or modifications, sends it back to the House approves it, it goes to the Senate makes changes, sends it to their committee, they make changes. If they agree to it, it goes, if they make changes, it goes back to the House, they agree, it goes to the governor signs it. In the House, in the committee, they stripped the language out of the bill. They took it out because they say it's a tax and they don't want another tax in the state of Ohio. This is a totally local decision for a community to make on how much they want to spend to make their kids safer. Although it's stripped out at the House, it can be put back in the Senate. I'm going to urge all of you to contact Senator Bob Hackett. Call him, send him an email, but let him know he needs to get this back in the bill this year. The longer we wait, we're missing opportunities here. This is a cheap fix to make sure that we've got funding to do this job right. I'm off my soapbox. Thank you.
Is there a bill number associated with that?
There is. It's the Township Omnibus Bill. They packaged it with that, which I didn't agree with, but I couldn't get the legislator to pick it up any other way, which is crazy. I know. To me, it's a logical, quick solution. So, but I'd like to hear thoughts on pooling our resources and getting it, at least at these two schools.
On behalf of the city of Bellfort, we're currently involved in an arrangement whereby we do provide resource officers on a very limited basis to BCI and Stephen Bell. We're certainly open to advancing that conversation and expanding that conversation. And I know my council members will speak on it also, but I'd first like to turn over to our city manager, who's had some more in-depth analysis of it. Thanks, Rob.
Yeah, with school resource officers, the big part that a lot of people forget to talk about is it's not just a armed officer uniform presence. The value of the school resource officer is the programming. It is the relationships, as was mentioned. And although you could assess based on statistics different levels of concern and risk, the elementary kids, the benefit and value to having contact and programming there is as they progress into the schools, you see a notable reduction of bullying, a noticeable reduction of things that can lead to intra-school violence and things of the like. And the goal of it is to overall increase the sense of safety and security, not just through the tangible things of the door barricades and the cameras and the armed folks, but actually engaging and strengthening the security and awareness of the community within the school and the community outside of the school. And by having resource officers that actually, commit to the theories and the thoughts of a true resource officer program, you make that link, and it's proven to be very beneficial. The program, I think, would be a collaborative approach between the entities involved. It would have to be, as Barry mentioned, a pooling of resources, so forth. Getting around the bureaucracy and the independence of, separate funding and separate taxing and all that stuff. But collaboratives can work where you take and you assign responsibilities, and who it is kind of not really relevant. It's what it is what's important. And that's the discussions that I know that we've had and engaged in. And I certainly can't speak for council, but our conversations have been of very, very strong support in moving forward. And regarding funding and how we move forward with that, it's merely a level of priorities. We need to respond to the service demands of the community. If the community wants enhanced efforts, programming, and relationships between the police, the community, and students within the schools, then that's just a shifting of priorities and a necessary shifting of resources. And we can certainly commit to doing that. As we certainly take a look at our approach, staffing and all that is always a concern, but we go by what is the priority. And if it is the priority, then we can administer whatever policy council sets. And from the staff side of things, we're prepared to do so.
If I can add one thing real quick, when we're talking about it, I want to mention what we took as testimony at the State House. There's very few, this hasn't affected a lot of communities in the United States, but it's affected a lot of people. But it affected our community. We had a child in our schools named Connor Betts. If you don't know who Connor Betts was, Connor was the kid who shot up the Oregon district. He had problems when he was here in school. We had a school resource officer that took him to task and controlled him. And I am convinced without that school resource officer here, he would have shot up the school, without a doubt in my mind. It makes a difference. And that was the relationship you're talking about.
Is it on? Yeah. Okay. Hi, my name is Forrest Greenwood, member of City Council. I've studied about this situation for a long time. It's a world we live in. I'm impressed that the school board stood up and at least getting something done. If you don't do anything, you might as well just go home. The support we have between city, township, school, parks is, I think, better than almost anywhere. School safety, no doubt, the most important thing we have on our plate. I think the resource officers are good. I mean, Doug Daughtery used to come up here in the mornings, meet and greet children. That meet and greet means a lot. It gives children they feel safe around police officers, not scared of them. They tend to be able to talk, they communicate better. It's like community policing with adults. You know, police officers go around town, you talk with adults, find out what's going on. Is there anything they would like to see done differently? Our police officers have always done a good job with that. You can't just do it once, it's continually, every day. It's like school safety. Once you implement, you gotta continue to work on it. There'll be changes. And I'll just touch base on the financial part. You know, at home, you got priorities and where you need to spend the money. My kids was always priority when they were living at home. And if there was anything safety, that was priority. There's always somewhere where you can kind of let it go a little bit. I think we can do better with the money and pony up. And I think we have, the public is very well interested and would like to see this work. And like I say, everybody here is stepping up. I don't see anybody, you know, backing down or getting in the way. We're all for this. So I'm impressed. So that's all I have. Thanks.
I don't have anything really much more to add other than that I'm very thankful to the school board for moving forward with a well-considered plan. And I know we're all committed to moving forward and seeing what the best result can be, because it is something, sadly, that is needed in today's world.
TJ Hope, Bellbrook City Council. As I mentioned at our previous city council meeting, I just also wanted to reinforce gratitude that the school board took on this initiative to investigate what a multi-layered security protocol is. I had the maybe luxury, maybe disadvantage of growing up in an Army family. Heard interesting adult conversations at the table between my mom and dad about international issues and security. And the one thing I learned at a young age, security has to be something that becomes intrinsic in you, and it has to be maintained. There is no, lock the door and call it secure. It's something that you have to actively feed and control and care for. So I'm looking forward to the situation that's rolled out. Confident subject matter experts are going to weigh in heavily and continually critique that plan over time. Assess how does it address the needs, what questions, what issues are there, because atrophy can set in. But I'm looking forward to the multi-layered plan, especially the focus on mental health. I think mental health is a significant issue that we're contending with, from stressful homes to stimuli around. I don't envy the job that teachers have today. And I wish them, I pray that they have the best resources available to keep the students safe and themselves safe. So if there's anything from the city council you guys need, please reach out. Thanks.
Ernie Havens, Bellbrook City Council. I'm just going to reiterate what I said Monday night at the city council meeting. We all sit here as elected or appointed officials of our community, recognizing that within the township and the city, we have roughly 15 to 17,000 people to represent. And not all those people are willing to stick their neck out and say what needs to be said to do the right thing for the community. And the fact that we at the table are willing to do that and to listen to the voice of the entire community instead of maybe only just a few squeaky wheels is very important. And I commend you guys for seeing through to what the community really needs. And I look forward to supporting your efforts in any way. Like TJ said, you got to communicate with us, let us know what you want. You have a good bit over the course of this, and we appreciate that. And we definitely want to show our support for the effort.
Brady Harding, Bellbrook City Council. First, I want to commend the school board for what you've taken on. This, we know this is a very difficult decision. And I know there's still a lot of details that still need to be worked out. But personally, I would fully support a collaborative effort if there's some way that we could all work together on this to help figure out a way to finance this and make this work for our kids.
This is my turn. Catherine Cyphers, Bellbrook City Council. I am also a supporter of a collaborative effort, and I appreciate the board's steps. First, I look at the approval that you guys made as the first step towards building a plan. I had, like Ms. Dorn had mentioned, I had received some concerns as well, and most of them were plan. How did they approve the plan? Why did they do that? But I would typically clarify, as you had mentioned, that this was an approval to build a committee, to build a plan, which will come back for approval. So I look forward to building that with you. And as Rob said, we're ready to help where we can. Thank you. You're going to repeat everything, aren't you?
Fred Kramer, Sugar Creek Township. First of all, congratulations. Dayton Daily News said you were a 5-star school. There were only one other, I think, in Greene County. And I think you were 3rd overall. You guys should be commended for your academic achievements.
Behind you, Fred.
The teachers need to be commended.
Yeah, congratulations.
You know, to keep the ratings up like that during the COVID year, I don't even know what you have to do to get that done. That's incredible. You should congratulations. Second thing is I agree with Barry. Security officers, if there's a way to finance this, if we can all work together to get this done, to me, that's the best way to get there.
Yeah, Rich Demko, fiscal officer at the township. As you heard from Barry, we're clearly in support of this. From a financial standpoint, I think we need to find a way to make this happen. I've coached here for many years, and many of you in the audience know that at the varsity level. And when the players gave me an excuse, I coached baseball, the ball's too cold, it's cloudy, all I kept saying was just find a way. That was my answer, and I think we need to just find a way to make this happen.
Carolyn DeStephanie, Sugar Creek Township. One thing that they mentioned at the last meeting that we had was that the average response time in the United States for the first responders to get to on-site if there is an emergency situation is 5 minutes. That's the national average. But most of these kind of situations, if there was the worst case scenario, happen and are over within 3 to 5 minutes. So to me, that's the very very big reason why we need to have a school resource officer on site. I think this is a very high priority for the schools, and I am very much in favor of working collaboratively and finding a way to make the finances work to do that.
I'm Martin Bowler. I'm also a Sugar Creek Township trustee and a lifelong resident of Sugar Creek. I went to Bellbrook schools from first grade all the way through high school, so I know a lot of our issues we had here have really changed since I graduated in 1975. We were laid-back school system. And then we actually brought guns to school in 1975. No one ever said anything about it. You know.
That you're aware of.
Yeah. Well, they never did, because we went out back with a baseball field that did target shooting during lunch. So nothing's ever been said about it. But, you know, I agree. We're working with the city and the school board all to try to resolve this problem. I know the world has changed a lot in the last 10 years, and we need to work together as a community. We don't need to say we're Sugar Creek or Bellbrook when it comes to the school system. We are a community that we need to work together on this as we do any other projects to help reduce the cost to our citizens. Whatever we can do to enhance the improvement to our citizens, no matter what we're talking about, fire, police, school security service, whatever, we need to work together to do this. So again, you know, I listen to what the people tell me. when I'm wanting to make my vote. It's hard as a township trustee when you're representing over 10,000 people to make a vote when you don't get input from the people. You need to get involved with your government. You need to come to the school board meeting. You need to come to city council meetings. You need to come to trustees meetings so you can help us make our decisions when we make our decisions. So, you get anything, you can always call our township house and we can get whatever you need, whatever you need help with.
Since we're going around in a circle here, I will say, I appreciate your perspective that you shared, Barry. My concern, if 4 isn't an option, or at least isn't an immediate option, and we have to go with something less. I mean, I agree, if we're talking about a threat, a student-based threat, the high school and the middle school are at greater risk. The other thing I consider, though, is geography. And we have 3 buildings that are very closely aligned, and we have one that's really far away, at least as you have to drive to get there. So I would certainly want, when time is a factor, I would certainly want that geography taken into account. And additionally, I think I'd like to hear, how to put this. Oh, so maybe either you or Rob can educate me a little more regarding the school resource officer that we have now. It's a shared cost, but also a shared resource, right? Like, obviously, if we were to have these additional officers, they would be assets to your department over the Christmas holidays when all the rest of your officers probably want time off. They come back to you as a line officer during summer break and whatnot. Is that ish?
That's
Please
true.
help educate me how that, because they are both a shared cost, but also a shared resource. It's not, we wouldn't get 100% of that officer's.
During the, this is working still, okay. During the school year, the idea would be to have a full-time resource officer at the school. So before it opens, till when it closes, the football games, other events, the school resource officer would be there. The summertime, it would be an additional hand for us, or to cover vacations or other things, absolutely. That's part of the problem in the cost, right? Because in those times today, we don't need that extra hand. Now, things are getting busier in Sugar Creek Township and Bellbrook and the area. So those call loads are going to go up. But we don't need an extra hand today, other than as a school resource officer. Now, Doug and I were talking, I think last Friday, Dr. Kozak, I should say, I'm sorry. But I think the way to approach this is not based on the actual officer that you have working the hours. Because Craig Black is our school resource officer this year. So Craig has been with us probably 12, 15 years, I'm guessing. So Craig is up there as far as pay. If we base the cost on Craig's pay, it's much more expensive than at an entry-level road person's cost. The increase in cost to us is to replace Craig's hours on the road. Does that make sense? So I think you base this cost at the lower wage rather than at the higher wage. Does that make sense?
Sounds great.
Yeah. That's
I'm not gonna argue
that's the
that.
way I would argue to our board to fund this is we do this on the actual cost basis and not an inflated number based on who we're putting in there that's got the experience. You're covering man hours with it. And, I don't know, we don't cover the cost today with what you guys think. I mean, he's much more expensive than that. And that's okay. I'm not complaining about that because it works. And I think my understanding is your school staff is happy to have Craig back. We're happy to have Craig back over. He's really good at the job. So
But that's what I would propose, is to look at it.
Our perspective is slightly different, but similar, because funding is just a little bit different in the way that the two entities are funded. As far as if you're going to look at a split, it's just impossible to try to come up with a percentage, because 100% of the benefit comes to both the school and the city and everybody else. So that's really not even an arguable point. As far as the dedication of the resource, if you're going to do it, you do it right, and that's kind of the way that it should be done. The resource is 100% dedication towards that assignment within the school. Even during the summertime, that's the time, just much like the educators in the room, when do they take vacations and take some time off and do their planning for the upcoming year? A true school resource officer in a program is going to limit the time off and make sure their accessibility is there during the entire school year. And in the summertime, they're still going to be doing some planning, some interacting possibly with admin and staff in preparation for the next school. So the allocation of the resource is 100% dedicated towards that program. In my opinion, there's a common misconception that can be a fill-in person, for an extra resource here and there. But it's more than just a patrol resource. It's a resource that's adding so much value and advantage to the growth of the connectivity between the community, the students, the police in the community, et cetera. And where it's shared off is some of the relief of, schools tend to have some calls here and there that either police or fire or any other type of, service-oriented organization needs to come to. Well, the patrol won't have to respond to those. The dedicated school resource officer would be able to handle those and reduce some of the, we'll call it, I don't want to use the word burden, but workload, of the workload that might come in. So that's where there's an advantage. And in terms of successful SRO programs, I know I've preliminarily spoken, and I know that I've spoken with Dr. Kozat, that, like many successful programs, the financial part is a 50-50 split. And, we've preliminarily looked at some budget things, and as we've mentioned before, we're prepared. We would need to add an additional officer, but that wouldn't be hiring in an SRO. That would be taking a look at somebody that is currently within the organization, that's already familiar and ingrained within the community, that's, capable and already has relationships established with young folks and teachers and administrators that would be able to fit in and follow the methods of a school resource officer program. And, looking at the actual breakdown of the finances, it's a down the middle split, because again, we both get 100% of the benefit. And, looking at dedicating the financial resources, we both have a lot to gain in reserve on that. And that's kind of the model that I've discussed with Dr. Kozat, and that, we're going to work on as the conversations progress, to be able to take back respectively to my board and his board in terms of administering how a program would look. And, fortunately, we've got the ability in our general fund to be able to reallocate and prioritize some things, and we've been lucky enough to reallocate and shift some things over the last couple of budget cycles, with a focus on some projects. And council gives the word on what their priority is, and it's our job to make sure to implement those priorities. And I've heard clearly and continue to hear that this is a priority, and if this is a goal and the school is a willing partner, then we're prepared to move forward and commit on that.
I believe if I can disclose this, but in one of our sessions, we were talking about some creative ways to get around some of these things. Like you talked about the relationships, that's very important. We also talked about having setting up a table in our buildings or an office in our buildings to have patrol officers be able to come and do paperwork or file reports. We've heard, I believe the security guy was talking about that as maybe an option to get around some of the financials for that. Can you guys talk about maybe if that would be an option? I know for I think Stephen Bell is the one we're talking about. They're just kind of not in that line with us. So setting up an office for them to do some sort of file their paperwork if it's a presence that we want.
Much like every other type of job and position in the world here recently. The way that the job is done has shifted. The days of having to go sit down and write stuff that, that's just not part of the demand anymore. Everything is mobilely done and everything, can be done to maximize the availability of that patrol force, out to be mobilized, ready to go respond to something. Yeah, even 10 years ago, you had to, go to the station to file a bunch of stuff, and that was commonly done. But yeah, certainly as we have with the current arrangement, our officers still come every morning and go down and greet the kids and high five them and all those things and increase the presence. But it's time to take it to the next level and dedicate that resource, right?
All right, any of the other leaders want to comment on this discussion at this point? Okay.
And maybe just in case we're getting to the closing of this portion, I just want to say thank you. Thank you very much. As I heard everybody go around, I mean, it's amazing to hear so many people that obviously care for and love the children of our community. So thank you. But on that topic of prioritizing, obviously I understand it would be impossible to come to detailed decisions tonight. Those will evolve over time. But on behalf of myself, maybe on behalf of the school board, I love, Barry, what you said about prioritizing and maybe short-term, medium-term, long-term goals. I would like to offer anything that I can do, whether that be contacting other school boards, perhaps contacting the Ohio School Board Association, of which we are a member, that we can help you, help anybody with the legislation you mentioned. So I'm not exactly sure what the next steps are, but know that even for some of those longer-term things, we're all in, and we appreciate you all very, very much.
Thank you. I also want to say thank you for the discussion and the emphasis on safety for our students. Certainly to have 2 school resource officers full-time is a great start because we have 4 buildings and want to certainly be able to eventually be having a school resource officer at every building full-time. So I know that we've talked a little bit about 2. Certainly, I don't want to lose sight that really the goal for us is 4, so that we have that presence in every building every day. Any other comments?
Yeah, so I'm just trying to make sure I'm clear on what next steps. I think Mr. Kinsey, you're talking about next steps here. So just want to make sure I'm clear on next steps here. So that we leave the meeting that we're all on the same page with the next steps. So is the goal at some point for SROs? Is that a goal, a possibility, ideal world, or, and then, what are the next steps? Is it myself working with Mr. Schomer and Mr. Tiffany through their trustees, through their councils, to try to see over whatever time to be able to do the best we can to work on those things? Is that just trying to be clear on what next steps are?
I think that's appropriate, but I also would love to take it a step further in saying that in addition to the 3 of you, perhaps whatever does not constitute a quorum, but a member of each of council, of the trustees, of the board, form a committee is the wrong word, but
collaborate together.
A committee of sorts to make sure that priority and focus remains, and because I presume in the near term choices are going to have to be made about where things are utilized, how they're shared, probably, and I think it's important to have representation from each entity as well. So I don't know if each individual group wants to decide here who that person could be, or if that's something you're all open to at all.
Oh, I thought you wanted to drop, sorry. No, okay, gotcha.
Thank you. As far as next steps go, Dr. Kozad, definitely, I think there's two elements here, maybe a subtlety and an early comment. School resource officer is a single point of failure. And so I think we're hearing full support of a resource officer. But I think you're also hearing support of all of the things that you guys are trying to do as you move forward, and not just the one thing. This one thing is a big question with the price tag on it, and I think you're hearing you got some community support there, but definitely did not want to overlook the other elements of your plan that I think are also very important.
Certainly, we would agree that we're looking at multiple layers in all different, from a technology perspective, from a facility perspective, from a personnel perspective, multiple layers, so that we don't have those single points of failure in any one. I would concur. Other comments? Any more for the next steps? All right, then are we ready to go on to open communication, public comment, or do we have any other comments from any of our entities?
We'll talk about any other topics.
I'd love for council to reshare what you shared the other night at your meeting about crosswalk improvements and.
If we're ready to get into the open discussion, public comments, I can start from the city of Bellbrook.
Great.
I'm sorry. Can we talk
Sorry.
about sidewalks?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
That'll be
I'm
part
sorry.
and
I
parcel.
apologize.
Okay.
I apologize. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, one of the things that we're awarded is this American Rescue Plan Act money, the ARPA money. We got slightly less than the township, I believe. About 780 now, just noting. And we've got a couple of projects going on right now. We just recently entered a contract to construct and install storm drain improvements to Lower Hillside Drive. And those of you who live in that area know that's been a problem for quite some time. Additionally, with the ARPA money, we've entered into a contract to install an outdoor warning system, which will be 2 sirens. So those are going to be good for the community. I suspect almost everybody's going to be able to hear them. It sounds like the range is pretty decent on them. We just completed our asphalt paving project for the summer, and strangely enough, I got the invoice at home for $203,000 sent directly to me. So, but more than that, city finances.
Thanks for picking that up.
And then the other thing is the next big thing. And I'll give the mic to the other council members to talk about what's going on. They can talk more about streetscape. But the streetscape is a downtown program. It's in our website. It's got a lot of activity. One of the first things you're going to see is crosswalks. Other than that, the thing we're going to be focused on the near future is the budget for 2023. Without having an income tax, our budget is like a gigantic puzzle that has to come together. Every little piece has to match up. Now we can squeeze out some extra money for the SROs, but I think that's for a good cause. So that'll be the challenge before council, is to make the budget come together, make it happen, and we're ready to do it. At this point, I'll bounce the microphone out to other council members to talk about current updates in Bellfort.
Appreciate the park district accommodating alcohol in the park. I think that'll probably get started maybe this fall, but it's for civic activities. I hope people understand. You just can't walk in there with a six-pack. But it's for activities that, and it's for township people, Bellfort people. It's part of our plan to get people downtown. That's just one of the things. We've got a museum. I don't know if you've been down through town lately. It's, we're going to leave it logs. It's a bright spot now. I think it's going to really help the improvement of the looks downtown. And like the mayor said, there's crosswalks coming in. We've got just a line of projects that's going to happen quickly if things continue to move like they have. So we're moving forward, definitely. That's all I have. Thanks.
Well, I can't add too much more to that other than that I'm thrilled about the museum with the log facing the original structure is in as good shape as it is. We'll be taking action to secure and preserve it. And I think there won't be anybody standing in front of that building anymore asking me, oh, do we have a museum in town? It's right there. So, I'm thrilled about that part, especially, and the crosswalks that will be in place there for people coming down from the schools and across the park. That's going to improve the safety of that intersection tremendously.
Yeah, I just wanted to first start off by saying it's been about a year since we brought our new city manager in. Rob stepped in quickly, and the initiatives that he took on, things that we didn't even plan or think about, the efficiency that he's brought into our city in terms of digitizing a lot of our processes, adding, or I should say, increasing efficiency within the city. I just want to say thank you. If you haven't noticed on the website, you can do a lot of things online, which you used to have to fill out, print out, bring it down. And there's also an Engage Bellbrook portal where sometimes we put out surveys. We just want to get feedback from people. And that's really the lens that we get to see issues through, other than day-to-day interaction. But we tend to shop at the same places, talk to similar people, go to similar events. Sometimes your view can be a little constricted. So please encourage people to go check out that Engage Bellbrook for questions that we're seeking input. Something we passed or got in the works recently was the establishment of a community improvement corporation. This has been something that has been debated for some time. Essentially what that does is it creates a much more lean organizational structure to market or sell or acquire assets for the city's economic redevelopment. So whereas, let's say the city owned a building that was held by a public entity, and the business were interested in acquiring it, they would have to come before city council in an open forum, disclose their plans, and then probably wait a month or 2 or 3 or more for something to get passed to complete that transaction of assets. With the CIC, with proper bylaws and articles of incorporation, that entity will function almost as a business. So we're looking forward to the progress that we made with that. So this might lead into some really crazy discussion, but traffic flow around schools. So I drop off my son for wrestling in the winter, and I'm on the backside of the high school, back by the entrance where the athletic director's office is. And there's a road that leads back there, and it stops. Has there ever been looked at the feasibility or the cost of continuing that road as an alternate exit at the end of the school, or as an alternate entrance at the beginning of the school, and see how that might alleviate some of the traffic flow?
What road stops?
So it goes behind the high school. I should say it goes on the east side of the high school, and it's along the back side of the neighborhood, and it stops. Can that continue out to Feedwire as just an alternate release point?
There's a road behind the high school that connects one parking lot to the other parking lot. Are you saying go straight out then to Upper Bellbrook?
Yeah.
Sure, with a lot of money.
I just didn't know if that was ever in the calculus.
Zoning for the township.
Yeah.
Ouch. Let's make it out.
You guys want for that?
Sure, I mean, those thoughts have, of all the things that we had thought about, those come with a price tag. I don't have any idea what that price tag is. And then you also have to worry about the traffic flow on the South Alpha. And those are all things that obviously traffic folks and township and county and whatever else would have to study.
Okay. Worth a shot.
Security resource road.
Yeah.
That's where it's going to be cheap.
Maybe the traffic elevates stress levels. And I think everything else has been covered. Thank you.
Thank you. Kind of changing the tide here, talking more about the community. I guess I'm really happy to say, and I'm surprised a lot of people don't already know this, but in 2022, so far, we have welcomed 11 new businesses into the downtown Bellbrook area. That is a heck of achievement, in my opinion, and it has a lot to do with these people that you see here on the corner of this table. There's been a lot of changes, whether it's property maintenance code, attitude of the city, welcoming, problem solving, helping businesses find a way to make it work instead of showing them the door. So really proud to be a part of this team, and I think that's a heck of achievement. And then I do want to touch base on crosswalks. A lot of people think crosswalks are just paint on the street that you walk across and everybody magically stops their car and waits for you to walk across. That doesn't happen. Specifically, if you take a look at the crosswalk downtown by the library, one car stops and someone walks across the painted lines. They think they're safe, but the car behind the car that stopped decides to go around them. That really kind of explains it in a nutshell. It's not that simple. So as we put these crosswalks in, we're bottlenecking the street so that that doesn't happen. We're changing the curb cuts, things like that. So just keep in mind, it's not just paint on the street. We could do that almost on every corner. And we do have paint on the street now, and hopefully people are watching for that, and people are hearing this, maybe the ones that cut around and try to go around the traffic that stopped. But those crosswalks are going to make a big difference. Everything else has been touched on. Appreciate the time, and I actually appreciate the opportunity to come together as a community and talk about these things.
I just wanted to comment. I'm new this year to City Council, still learning a lot of things that are going on. This is obviously my first one of these that I've been to. This should happen more often. In my opinion, this should be like a quarterly thing, not an annual thing. This is awesome to be able to get everybody's input here in one room, have good feedback from everybody all at once, so that everybody talking different discussions. So I would just encourage this to be more of a quarterly thing if we could in the future. Thank you.
So I'm not sure if anyone actually answered your question, but the crosswalk from South Linda over 725 was a topic of discussion because there were signs and lights, but no paint on the street. That has since then been painted, so at least folks have direction on where they can go instead of diagonal. The other two crosswalks that are a priority for us right now are the one that we are putting into with our ARPA funds, as they mentioned earlier, was one that will take the kids from Bellbrook Park to the museum, which if all of you have been downtown on Dairy Shed Fridays, they all cross there. They don't go all the way downtown. So that was one of our high priorities, that location. And then one that takes them from the library over 725. So those are our next two. Right now we're waiting for our preliminary plans from the engineering, and then we're going out with an RFP. That's all.
Thank you.
I have nothing else to add.
I just wanted to comment on the new alcohol policy. Couple of things. Number one, that policy isn't yet in effect because we have to publish. It's a rule change. One of our rules now being changed. You have to go through legal publication, so it's not quite ready yet. But what it does do is it requires a permit, and it's limited to either the township, the city, or a civic organization. And finally, it's also limited to Bellbrook Park. That is the only one of our parks that we're considering allowing alcohol themselves. So hopefully that'll cut down a lot of phone calls where somebody wants to take their beer.
I know we don't have a lot of time before the township has to head out here, but I'll give you just a few quick updates. We are having discussions on the Wilmington Pike corridor. Myself and Mr. Kramer were part of the Dayton Development Coalition team that went to Capitol Hill. And we met with Congressman Turner and Sherrod Brown's staff and Rob Portman's staff. And as a feeder community for Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, we've received approval that we are going to get some money to help improve that section, anyone that's been at Cornerstone. And one key element to that is we are teaming with the city of Centerville. And if any of you followed what happened at Cornerstone a few years ago, you know that was a very new development and a wonderful new collaboration that we're able to work together again. So we're happy to report that that's happening. We are also working on the widening behind this building of Carpenter Creek, and we were hoping, or Carpenter Road, we were hoping that would happen before the school year started this year, but unfortunately, supply chain issues and working issues, it's just hard to find workers that can get things done on some of those. And a quick update on what the township's doing with our ARPA money. As far as connectivity, broadband connectivity, we made it our goal to have 100% of the township have accessibility to broadband. And the idea is if we ever are in a situation where folks have to work remotely and we want students to have access to the internet across the board. So that was our number one priority. And then secondly, with the supply chain issues and the cost of workers, road repairs are a lot more expensive than they used to be. So that was what we did with the rest of our ARPA money, was to do road improvements in the township, which we thought was a very big priority.
Well, like I said, we got our meeting starts at 7 o'clock down at the Township House. And if you guys have any questions or any comments or have any input, please come to our trustees meetings. They're the first and third Mondays. They start at 7 o'clock. They're at the Township House on Ferry Road. We'd be more than happy to see more people show up at the meetings.
And I want to leave, thank you all for coming, and apologies for making this go all the way around again. I really just thought we would be remiss without Mr. Price here if we did not talk about street improvements and walkability, because I know that's his passion, so thank you.
I was excited to tell him about the paint, but he wasn't here, so.
Yes, I'm sure he appreciates it. Thank you.
He said he'd be watching, so.
Oh, good, so he needs to drive by because it went down, I think, the
I'll be very
next
happy.
day or 2 days, yeah. After we talked about it. On South Main.
Are you guys planning to do public comments before the council meeting? Open communication?
I think it's a public.
Yeah.
We've already done our comments.
Okay, that's right.
So we'll be up for public.
All right. And it will be the SCA.
Oh,
All right, thank you very much, all of you, for updating us all, for comments. We're going to let our SEA representative speak to us now on the podium.
You might want to, feel free to scoot around.
Yeah, that's
Awkward position.
but I'm assuming that's Mark.
He's Ellen. I don't know if we need to give him a mic.
Do you want a mic?
yes.
If you want me to, yeah, I don't feel like, I've had a long day. I can usually project my voice. Thank you so much. Hello, is that on?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. So, thank you for all the other committees that are here. Thank you for serving this community. Mr. Schweller, I've known you for a long time. Hopefully the boys are doing great. I'm sure that I've maybe taught or coached some of your kids over the years. I've been teaching here in Bellbrook for 24 years myself, so maybe I know you. So I am the SEA president, and I apologize. I will not take up too much of your time here tonight because we just had a couple of things that we try to take advantage of every time we have a meeting because we have a negotiated item where we can talk to the board a little bit. And so I just kind of wanted to point out that on the press release, and I just, maybe this is just for clarification, it says in order to develop a layered and balanced safety approach, the Bellbrook-Sugarcreek Local Board of Education authorized On September 8, 2022, the creation of a highly vetted and highly trained active shooter response team consisting of volunteer staff members. It doesn't say a committee, but then if you go to the actual resolution, it does say that it creates a committee, but then directly below that, it says it creates the actual team, and it gives all of the requirements for that team. So, I mean, maybe you're just unsure about what was actually passed, but just making sure that we're all on the same page, because you did indeed pass that active shooter response team, as far as I can tell by the resolution. And so, earlier when we were talking, I appreciate your time again. I'm gonna try to make this sweet. So I had a lot of people approaching me also about this particular issue and what could be done and all these kind of things. And we had some staff members that were speaking out very much against this. And I myself realized that when we talked about it, it was really felt like we were left out of the discussion. It wasn't really about the actual policy itself. So we conducted a survey of staff. We sent it out to all staff members, 146 replied, 37 classified, 109 certified staff. I'm not going to go over all the questions, just some that are pertinent to what we're discussing here today. There was a variety of people from every building, including a few from the board office. Now, I think going back to when people were confused about what had happened, we asked the question, says, do you agree that the Bellbrook-Sugarcreek Board of Education, by providing a 48-hour public notice and a 3.5-hour public meeting, was adequately transparent in its decision-making process? 81.5% of staff members felt it was not transparent. 11 felt that it was, and 7.5 were undecided. And so with that, that's just an aspect of that. And then Ms. Thorne, I want to appreciate that you mentioned before that committee may have some staff input. So one thing that we asked also was, do you agree that the Bellbrook-Sugarcreek Board of Education should include SLAS, the SEA, and administration on the implementation committee for the above mentioned response team? 146 response, 87% of people felt that they should be on there. 8.9 said no, which were 13 people, and then 6 people were undecided, about 4%. And then I think that kind of goes back to this last portion when we were talking about people being unsure about the actual, what was passed, and I think some of us were also unsure. The one question we asked was, what is your position? Because we felt like we needed to know, so what is your position on the recently enacted creation of an active shooter response team that may include anonymous staff members? So I want to tell you that 25% of people were undecided. And I think that really goes down to the idea that it was not very well communicated to people not really sure what this process was about, what the outcome was. And then, now I did include a copy of the press release and the resolution and the newspaper article from yesterday's Dayton Daily News. So people did have some resources to kind of look at. For the people that support, 18.5% of staff members support that active shooter response team, and 56.8% do not. So not an overwhelming majority, but a majority of people. But really the concerning part to me, besides the fact that there are a numerous number of people that oppose it, would be that undecided part. Just the fact that it wasn't really communicated well, what I think would be something that we could probably work together on to try to make sure that we can have that opportunity to kind of have those kind of relationships and discuss with the people. So I think the rest of the survey, we'll just talk at our own next board meeting, if that's okay.
Okay.
So one thing I did want to ask, so sometimes when I have gone away, and forget people are behind me, I've had you guys ask me questions in the audience, and I don't always feel comfortable in that format, so I guess if you have any questions now, I'd be willing to, yes ma'am?
So you sent it to all teachers,
Correct,
including
all
union
staff.
and non? Okay.
It went to all staff members, so certified, non-certified, members, non-members. And we didn't really distinguish between the membership. The only thing we distinguished between were the classified and certified.
Okay.
So, yes, sir.
Just forgive my ignorance, how many possible respondents could you have gotten?
You know, I believe there's around 250, is that right? 260, so 260. So we did not have 100, we did not have 100%, but I mean, we had a good chunk of people respond.
Okay.
So.
And I'm sorry, was it sent to administrators as well?
It was sent to all staff, so we did not include a spot for them to answer. So they may have received it, and I don't know their response. But I would just hope that, we can maybe continue to have discussions on things that are important to teachers because we care about students.
Sure.
And obviously we want what's best for them also. And I think sometimes when we have a lack of communication, sometimes that's not always helpful. And I do want to say one last thing, and this is kind of a personal note. People keep bringing up Connor Betts. And I taught and coached Connor and his sister Megan. They were both on the track team. They were both throwers, as was Chase, the other person that he shot. They were all three together. They were friends. I'm telling you, when he was in high school, he may have been in some trouble, but he wasn't able to access those weapons until he was an adult. And that's one of the biggest reasons why he was able to perpetrate that particular crime. I mean, one of the people that helped him to gather that drum barrel that he had was the only person that went to jail on this whole situation. So I just don't think that it's appropriate to always kind of focus on that particular situation, because I don't know if it's the same. I mean, obviously many of these other situations are, but I don't know about the Bettses. I feel bad for them. I think they still live in this community. I just don't think that it should be brought up as often as it is. And I think if there are any other questions, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to go to our open communication time. I know that we received a number of comments from folks, and I think they're, like Mr. Carrera said, there's some confusion or misunderstanding as to some of the parameters that we specified when we met last week, or a little more than a week ago. So that there are some guardrails around what we were talking about the last meeting. One, so if these are your concerns, we're looking at having we intend guardrails to deal with some of these things. One is that no one is going to be carrying in school on any regular basis by any stretch of the imagination. Firearms would be in a secure, locked, limited access location for anyone who's on the volunteer, active shooter response team. Firearms would be used only in case of a deadly threat, and that volunteers would be highly vetted, psych profiles, well-trained, those kind of review with the individuals who volunteer. So if those were some of your questions or concerns, those were specified when we met the last time. So just bring that up as a point of information. So first we have Astrid Kaphammer to talk about safety. Astrid.
You the mic there, she'll need it.
You're in charge now.
She'll need it.
That's right. Yeah, Catherine, can you put them? Thank you so much.
Okay. So don't stand awkwardly at the table. Hi, I'm Astrid Kaphammer, and I have an 8th grader, a 6th grader, and a 3rd grader in the district. So I watched the board meeting last week. I watched them all online, and it's a lot of times hard to hear everybody. So I did miss a lot that last week's board meeting. I actually thought SROs were passed and we were going to have one in every single school. That's what I thought happened. So I was really disappointed when I found out that wasn't true, because we say that safety of our students and staff is our #1 priority. And quite frankly, I feel like you need to put our tax dollar money where your mouth is, and we need to have SROs at every single school soon. And we need to. And it's 1.3% of our budget. How can we say 1.3% of our budget is too high to reach our top priority? I do definitely agree that the teachers need to have more input, because they are, after all, the ones that are being asked to execute these plans. But what I do have to say today is my own personal experience. My first teaching job, I'm a high school history teacher, and my first teaching job was at Kennedy High School in Sacramento, California in 2005. First year. And we had a lockdown. Not a drill, an actual lockdown.
We were told we had a potential active shooter on school grounds, and it was absolutely terrifying. I remember very clearly one of my male students saying to me, "If the shooter comes here, I will protect us." My first thought was, absolutely not, that's my job. But the brave young man, he meant it, and I think about it still to this day, like tears in my eyes, because he was willing to sacrifice himself. He is a child still, and no child ever should have to be put in that position to make that decision. The fact that a 16-year-old was put in a position to make a potential fatal decision, I can't grasp that. We can't do that. And as we have seen on TV, some students have already sacrificed themselves to save their classmates. This simply cannot continue. During this lockdown, my defenses were my body and prayer. That's it. At that moment of pure fear, if I knew that an SRO was near, I would have felt sheer relief like I've never felt before. I would have felt like we had at least a fighting chance, but I didn't have that. We were completely defenseless. I had never felt such a feeling of helplessness like I did that day. It was horrific. Fortunately, the man on the grounds was making threats and didn't actually have a gun. But what if he did? I don't know. The question still remains though, how do teachers and students protect themselves in the classroom? SROs are crucial for school safety. And as you can clearly see, there's an officer here tonight. Thank you for being here. The optics of this look terrible though. We are saying the adults, okay, I'm almost done, sorry. We are saying the adults deserve officer protection at this meeting tonight, but our children and teachers don't during the school day. As of right now, teachers and students are extremely vulnerable. That's scary and reckless. I thank you for trying to do everything in your power to properly protect them.
Thank you very much. And just as a point of clarification from our last meeting, when the little ringer goes off, it's not Dr. Kozak getting a call. It's the 3 minutes for each person. Eric Sprindiger.
Before I do my prepared remarks, I just wanted to try to have a little back and forth. There was a question about if we had limited resources for SROs, what building would we choose? The data I'm familiar with says the high school, by far. Now the FBI kind of ranks it. High school is definitely the most, then elementary school, then middle school, then junior high. Now there's also more students in elementary schools, K through 6, than there are in middle school. So, we haven't standardized that data, but I would say right off the cuff, my knowledge already, high school. Obviously there's nuances as far as geography and things like that. Okay, so that was just, hopefully that doesn't count against my 3 minutes, but if it does, that's okay. I've been involved in gun violence prevention since 2012 when my daughter was 2 and at preschool here in Bellbrook, the morning of Sandy Hook. I'm a staunch advocate for safe storage practices, as we know that 91% of school shooters are current or former students of that school. Most are teens, and the majority obtain their guns from the homes of family and friends. Some days I wish I didn't know as much about gun violence as I do. It's like the film The Matrix, where I chose the red pill instead of the blue. In grad school, I learned that increased access to guns increases the risk for suicide, for domestic violence to be more lethal, and accidental shootings. It's hard to hear that the solution to gun violence is more guns. Now, is it possible an armed response team could protect students? I suppose it could in a singular incident. But what safety risks do we incur alongside this? Even the FOP and the National Association of SROs have cautioned against this. Instead, let's lean on layered, evidence-based practices, many of which Bellbrook has been doing. I'm grateful for tonight's meeting, which has been advertised for weeks. What wasn't advertised for weeks was the September 8th school board agenda with only one sentence about the creation of an active shooter response team, just 48 hours notice. At this meeting, a local law enforcement officer presented on active shooter situations. It was hard not to notice his bias. For instance, he emphasized that California has the highest number of active shootings despite, quote, draconian gun laws, and that Ohio is number 5. He failed to provide per capita stats, which is important since California is the most populous state. Yes, there was a time for public input immediately after this one-sided presentation. A total of 8 people spoke, split 50-50. But it wasn't until after the public comment portion that the board introduced, amended, and voted on a resolution to create an active shooter response team, which includes volunteer employees. They discussed this for a total of 1 hour. Was this legal? Yes. Was it ethical? I would argue it wasn't. School staff, who aren't allowed to have direct contact with board members, were not asked for input ahead of time. And I'm so glad to see so many staff here tonight. And some of the stickers say staff deserve input. Parents, who do have more latitude to email and speak, they do have more latitude to email and speak, but why didn't the district send out a remind message about the September 8th meeting? This was only done after the resolution was passed. All board meetings should be advertised through Remind and social media. Placing the agenda on the district's webpage, I'm sure meets the legal requirements for public notice, but is this the best practice? Especially when it involves introducing guns into our school. Further, why not introduce the resolution, discuss, and table for a further meeting before voting, especially when you have a community meeting already planned? If you value transparency and communication, I urge you to believe parents and staff when they say they felt blindsided and to do better going forward. As Maya Angelou famously said, I did then what I knew. When I knew better, I did better. Thank you.
Diana Presnell, on communication.
It's been brought up a couple times now, but I'd like to specifically focus on the transparency and communication. In 2021, 4 of you, in multiple places, told the community that good communication mattered. On August 29th, Kinsey wrote, "Please know that one of my core values is I believe meaningful communication is essential." In October of 2021, he said the following.
Really can't do a better job at having real, honest, and goodness two-way conversations. And I'm trying to personify that.
So what does personifying real, honest, two-way conversation mean to Mike in practice? This is from an email reply he sent me on the topic of the new ASRT. My understanding is that our current policies did not require the board to have any public discussion or public vote on this topic. And specifically, the community was given advance notice through a public agenda item. His idea of advance notice was 2 days with zero advertisement that this topic was coming. During the BOE campaigning, Price posted this same thing on Facebook repeatedly. The practice to date of only hearing in public from community members through time-limited one-way communication during the open communication period school board meetings must end. Guess he forgot. And here's Price in the Meet the Candidate Forum last October.
And since I've been on the school board, again, go back and watch our award-winning YouTube videos. Scan through on DVR, and you'll find me actually regularly clamoring. We have to communicate with the community.
Where was Kevin's clamoring to communicate the topic of an armed volunteer team in our schools to us? In September 2021, Audra stated, "I 100% believe transparency is important. Given that there was no transparency in the conversations regarding whether or not the school needs an ASRT, aside from one non-advertised board meeting where the resolution passed, the statement seems less than truthful." How about her thoughts in the community chat from last October?
And so this community chat this is a beta test, and remember the topic of the first one is communication. So if you have ideas like we all just had, folks, we want you to come because this is what's going to shape what the communication looks like in the future.
How did the shape of communication end up looking like silence and secrecy? And why haven't there been more of these community chats? Lastly, there's Heidi. In August of 2021, she says, no more secrets unless protected by law, no more targeting individuals who bring concern, and no more decision-making processes that happen behind closed doors. Except that's exactly what happened here. Her comments from last October's candidates forum were,
I think that we need to have large-scale conversations with the board, not just they need to be topical, so that way we're not getting off on tangents and things like that.
where were the large-scale forums with the community to discuss this before voting it in? It just seems like all the campaign promises you guys made about better transparency and communication were forgotten the minute the polls closed.
And Josh Bresnan.
I'm gonna stand over here. Doesn't matter. Okay. So let me start by saying that I actually approve of having additional SROs in the schools. And I approve of the work that you have done to try and protect our children, and that includes the increased security posture you've put into the buildings. Thank you for doing that. But at this point, it's astonishing that every single one of you has spoken about open communication with the community, and you went on to have 3 months worth of executive sessions to proceed with a clown show of public discussion and immediately vote to pass your predetermined decision with zero thought for public input, or for the feelings and consideration of at least a third of this community whom you theoretically also are supposed to represent based on some expert's biased opinions. You proceeded after seeking the guidance of this expert without providing any reason for us to accept Lon Etchison as someone who should be making decisions about putting an unknown number of loaded guns into our school buildings. What we do know about Lon is that he attends the same gun range that Mike Kinsey is a rifle instructor at. When you ask a carpenter to fix a problem, they're going to bring you hammer and nails. When you ask a gun enthusiast to protect our children, their inevitable response is to bring more guns. You took this person's advice without further consideration, even after being presented with opposing expert views. At the very least, 4 of you should have considered a conflict of interest involved in considering a proposal from a Board of Education member who is publicly engaged in gun culture, who brings in experts from his own firearms training group with no balanced or contradicting opinions to consider at the time, and then gives that person time in a public board meeting to speak on behalf of the board as an expert. It simply demonstrates that you do not care about a portion of this community or in giving a voice to what these parents want their children exposed to. But even beyond those considerations, you've arrived at your desired decision with no plan or idea on how you're going to effectively prepare your chosen firing squad. Police are indemnified from unintentional harm caused by performing their duties by the agency who employs them. Any citizen who pulls a trigger is responsible for everything that happens to that bullet after it leaves the muzzle of the gun. Who is going to indemnify them? Are we going to pay taxpayer money to add to the insurance policies of the school in order to protect against those unfortunate circumstances? Are we going to increase our insurance to protect against the unfortunate access those guns may have to the general population who sometimes go into the schools? Or are the citizen deputies going to be providing their own insurance and assuming their own liability? And what maximum coverage are they going to be required to keep under those circumstances? Police and SWAT trainings are trained to work together under stressful and chaotic situations to enter and move through buildings. What level of training do you think these people are going to have after 40 hours of instruction? How is the school going to plan to handle staff who are now going to be focused on killing an armed intruder as fast as possible, not being in positions to support the rest of the school as they attempt to lock down and protect our children? You have not publicly considered any of these questions or any number of others that have been posed to you by an angry group of parents that you are refusing to acknowledge. Instead, you have irresponsibly arrived at your conclusion first. We need to put more guns in our schools. Now let's figure out how we're going to make that happen. We should be focused on how we keep as many guns as we can completely away from our school buildings. Adding more firearms into the environment puts guns next to our children every time they walk through school doors. This dangerous and unthinkable solution applied full-time to a problem that has many other effective ways of being dealt with. Thank you.
Thank you. Eric Price.
How you guys doing, mate? You guys know me. My name's Eric Price. I'd like to tell you first and foremost, I am here as a parent. I'm here as a retired police officer nothing else. I have no other motivation. That's it. Kind of with that, I kind of want to talk about a couple things, the actual planning process and the actual training that we need to be focused on. The planning process, in my opinion, needs to be a 5-step: deter, detect, deny, delay, and destroy. I'd like to be able to take you through that, but I got 3 minutes. I won't be able to do that. One of those things I want to talk about is deter. Unfortunately, in this situation, the type of individuals we have performing or doing active shooter scenarios are the kinds of individuals that are going there specifically to commit suicide. They're going there to end their life. So the hard targets aren't really a deterrent to them. The type of deterrents we need to talk about are kind of like you guys were talking about before. Some very good things come in the form of mental health and kind of attacking those problems before they become problems. So those are going to be probably the biggest deter steps you guys could possibly take. I know you guys can't reach inside the homes of every individual and fix everyone's mental health, but that's going to be the biggest way that you can target keeping individuals or detecting individuals from that type of scenario coming at you. The other thing I want to talk about is training. Now, part of my background includes we had built a 2-story training complex where you had a catwalk above, and on the first floor you had break-in doors. You had a facility where you actually entered, sometimes as a team, sometimes as an individual, but you could actually watch what was happening from the top. And we brought all kinds of experts in, sometimes specifically for active shooter. So in high-stress scenarios, once your adrenaline goes up, your ability to make decisions goes way, way down. So the type of training that you have to do, it's not the knowledge-based training, it's the behavior modification training. You have to put people in a high-stress situation that's going to force them to basically modify their behavior over and over and over again. Now, you guys are doing psychology analysis on the individuals. Every single individual you should be selecting should have some form of self-preservation. That's a good thing. That's a natural thing. But it's something you have to train someone out of to be able to respond to situations. That's personally why I'm not a huge fan of doing that with teachers. Secondly, it's my opinion that your teachers need to be moving people away from students. Now, as we had people come in and actually train, we would let them run through the areas. We had cameras and everything. And their ability to make decisions, even the experts, the ones that have been in multiple real-world scenarios, their reaction time reduced. Their ability to strike the target reduced. When we put them in a room of individuals where they had a single individual to target, or even 2 individuals to target, they ended up shooting other targets as well. Those are very, very important factors to take into account when you put an individual that hasn't had an adequate amount of behavioral modification training. We brought them upstairs and had them watch other experts go through that, and they got to see it at that point. The training facility we ended up building became the gold standard, and everyone in the eastern half of North Dakota ended up coming to that facility, and they would do that type of training, not just to give them the realistic feel of what it looks like, but also have them question what they think they knew, what their perception of what was actually going on. And that's what I challenge you to consider, that perhaps some of the ideas you may think of as experts aren't as real as you might think. We've all had that, situation. I'm sorry, I'll hurry up. We've all had that situation where my life passed before my eyes. That's the situation where those decisions kind of change. So if you put yourself in that scenario and you were to videotape it, you're going to be surprised at how slow you're going to react to those scenarios. So that's what I wanted to tell you as far as taking into account the training for these type of individuals. And I heavily, heavily recommend doing the SRO as opposed to arming non-professional individuals. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Price. All right, that finishes our public comment period. Does the city have anything else on their agenda for this evening?
Does any member of council have anything else to bring before us this evening? Hearing none, I declare our work session on Monday, September the 19th, 2022 adjourned. Thank you.
And from the Sugar Creek Board of Education, do we have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Mrs. Anderson? Do we have a second?
Second.
Mrs. Dorn? Calling the roll, Mr. Kinsey?
Yes.
Mrs. Dorn?
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter is a yes. Mrs. Anderson?
Yes.
Motion passes. We are adjourned at 7:21. Thank you all for coming this evening. Thank you, city officials, for being here as well.
Can't communicate. We got to,
I'm excited we got that. That's on my bucket list. A motion to adjourn and second. Here you can ask the question. Oh, and then you also do it. Oh, no. That is changing the document.
Thank you very much. That's true. Declare.
Did you go to Henry?
No, they go.
Yeah, really.